Since 2020 is clearly not taking care of us, we're kind of need to be taking care of ourselves. Hey son, everyone, and thank you so much for coming back. If you are new here, my name is Eve Daniels, aka The Nerdy Nanny, and I'm a grad student trying to make it work in Sweden, but also a self-published children's author. I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about something that is actually quite important to me, and I feel like is important to a lot of people, but doesn't get the real recognition it deserves. And I'm talking about self-care. I am doing this video in collaboration with Project AuthorTube, which is a month-long challenge created by the amazing Tamara Woods in preparation for National Novel Writing Month. For those who don't know, NaNoWriMo is a month-long challenge in the month of November where writers all across the globe try to crank out 50,000 words, the minimum length of a novel, in 1 month. I will of course be linking the playlist down below for the rest of the lovely participants in Project AuthorTube, and make sure you check those videos out. But a huge thanks to Tamara Woods for putting this together. It is always great when we can share resources with one another and help each other out. And on that note, we're going to talk about helping ourselves out a little bit. Most of the things I want to talk about are especially important when you have your nose to the grindstone for a huge project like Nano, for writing your thesis like I am, or just dealing with 2020 these days. Like I mentioned, self-care is something that is actually hugely important to me, and because of that, it's a subject that I have covered before. There is an article up on thenerdynanny.com right now detailing self-care steps that are key for students. I find that a lot of these also apply to writers, so feel free to go and check that out. There are also links of additional resources down below and just a few things that I find help me with my self-care. Taking the time out to take care of yourself is not selfish. This is something that I've had multiple streams about, and it's something that I talk about a lot. Oftentimes we can feel like putting our own needs first means that we're somehow inherently selfish or lazy or greedy, but it's just not true. You can only give so long as your own well isn't running empty. And I'm not just talking about creative wells. I'm talking about spiritually, physiologically, and in every way that counts. When you're coming off the tail end of an 18-hour double shift, you can't reasonably expect yourself to keep pushing. If you haven't eaten in 12 hours, you can't reasonably expect yourself to be able to focus well. These are things that we inherently know, and yet somehow manage to overlook in our effort to do more, to be more, to accomplish everything. And sometimes in the efforts of accomplishing everything, we need to stop and focus on accomplishing nothing. There are other videos out there that describe the things I'm talking about. The continual push towards the dreaded burnout. There are entire series dedicated to recognizing the signs and knowing when you're pushing yourself too far. I'm going to link some of those down below. But for right now, we're going to focus not on knowing when you're pushing yourself too far, but on how to take better care of yourself so that you don't get there, or once you are there, knowing how to bring yourself back. So, a study in self-care. What is self-care? I realize that a lot of people think that they already know the answer to this, but I wouldn't be asking if I didn't think it was important. A lot of times we tend to focus on the more Instagram-friendly versions of self-care. Buying the donut, having the glass of champagne, taking the afternoon off. And while yes, sometimes those are self-care. You know what else is self-care? Going to the grocery store. Doing the laundry. Any act that physically, mentally, or emotionally helps you to care for your well-being is an act of self-care. An easy way to sort of work out the basics of self-care, the more essential parts, is to imagine that you're 4 years old. If your parents did this for you, if your parents made sure that this was taken care of, That was them taking care of you. But unfortunately, we're adults now, and we got to do it for ourselves. Sometimes you get to that point where you can't concentrate anymore, and when I hit that wall, the thing that I find helps the most is to clean up my environment. I'm not saying I Swiffer or vacuum, because I don't do either of those. But a lot of times, if I'm feeling stuck, I'll put on a 10-minute funny video on YouTube, hit play, and tidy up my office. It makes a big difference in how I'm feeling, how my brain works, and it gives me a little bit of a break. But productive break, because I wasn't just watching funny videos. Now my desk is clean. Once you've taken care of your physical environment, we can move on to taking care of you. The very basics of self-care are physiological. That means feeding yourself, going to the bathroom, taking a shower, preferably not at the same time. I had some go-to writing snacks when I lived in the States that included things like veggies and hummus, the occasional chips and salsa, or a big old bowl of guacamole. Because avocados are a vegetable, so guacamole's a salad, right? Taking the time to make food for yourself reminds you that you're worth it, that you are worth taking care of, and that this is something you should do regularly. It also helps stop you from being hangry and glaring at your computer. The other thing that I find helps is to take a step away and take a shower. A lot of times, just being forced to stand there under the water is incredibly relaxing and also helps to clear your mind. Do a little stretch, grab a big tumbler of water, and you can get back to it. But taking these breaks to take care of yourself are vital. You can't continue to crank out thousands of words or hours of homework or mastering new subjects if your brain is half distracted by the fact that you haven't eaten anything other than Mountain Dew and Doritos for the last 4 days. As a lot of us know, there's only so many hours you can spend working on the same project or trying to accomplish the same thing before your brain just rots. And quite frankly, there's not much that you can do about that. Some people have this magical ability to power through, but if you're like me, trying to push it when you're studying or writing or anything else just makes it harder to focus and generally means the quality of your work has gone down. So instead of trying to push through, step back. Put on some music, go for a walk in the woods, think about something completely different. Not just jumping to a different assignment or project, but literally leave your house. We can still do that in most of the world. Taking a step back allows your brain a chance to actually rest. It allows a chance for you to recalibrate and be able to better focus when you do get back to it. I recommend setting a timer for 10 to 15 minutes and focus on doing something else for that time. When the timer is up, depending on whether you actually need to get back to work or just want to, you'll be able to make a better informed decision about whether spending time working on your project is the best thing or whether you should continue to step away. When you have deadlines, obviously you need to meet those, but when you're pushing yourself for the sake of pushing yourself, sometimes it's better to recognize that you can take a break. A lot of times when we're working on something and it's getting hard and we're getting frustrated, it can be difficult to talk to people in our lives who may not necessarily know what's going on. Keeping the people that you care about in the loop is vital. Let them know what you're working on. Let them know why it's important to you. You will probably get varying degrees of interest based on who you're living with and what it is that you're working on. My dad tries to follow along with my research, but a lot of times I'm just talking to myself and he's the sounding board. But that's okay. Sometimes you need to get it off your chest in order to be able to approach it fresh. And sometimes an outside perspective, even if it's not necessarily an expert opinion, actually does make a world of difference. I also want to talk about relationships here, not just because of the way that you talk to the people that you're living with, but also about how you talk to yourself. I know way too many of us as students, writers, and just people trying to get things done, who, when we get stuck, can delve into negative self-talk. It's way too easy to get stuck and start calling yourself names, to start saying that you aren't capable or that you can't do this. But the truth of the matter is that when you're doing that to yourself, you are bullying yourself. And bullies usually speak from a place of poor self-esteem and negativity. You have to recognize that if you do slip up and talk to yourself that way, that it's not true. The same way the 4-year-old in the playground calls another kid stinky because he's upset about something else, or because he doesn't feel good about himself. You're talking to yourself in a negative way because right now you don't feel good about yourself. But it doesn't make those statements true. It doesn't give them any merit, and it doesn't make you less capable. Recognizing negative self-talk is the first step to changing it. Knowing that you do it and calling yourself on it. Another thing that actually helps, which I thought was completely useless when I first started doing it, but actually makes a difference, is writing down 3 to 5 positive things about yourself. Affirmations can, for a lot of people, seem like gobbledygook, but there is actual power in telling yourself positive things. When you tell yourself, I can do this, I've done it before. When you can tell yourself, I'm actually really smart. When you can tell yourself, I think I'm capable of this, and mean it, it makes a world of difference. And the best part is, you don't even have to mean it at first. Telling yourself is enough. Because just like with negative self-talk, when you repeat something to yourself often enough, you start to internalize it. If you tell yourself you're dumb, sooner or later you start to believe it. But when you tell yourself that you can do this, you start to believe that too. One of the things I like to talk about whenever I talk about self-care is present you doing future you a favor. It doesn't have to be big, but oftentimes it's the little things that pile up on us. Those endless to-do lists of things that only take 2 minutes each, but somehow we never get around to them. So do future you a favor and find one of those things and get it done. Cross something off your to-do list, get the laundry started, or maybe when you were fixing yourself food earlier, make a double portion. And now you have lunch for tomorrow. Or, later today, depending on how hungry you are. We all have obstacles in our lives, and eliminating as many of those as possible by doing future you a solid is the definition of self-care. I hope this was helpful. I know that self-care is easier said than done sometimes, and in all honesty, in our hustle and bustle culture, it can be so easy to just want to keep going. But being honest with yourself, recognizing when you're pushing too far or when you just aren't able to concentrate is huge. Being able to do something about it is the next step. So please, remember to take the time and take care of yourselves, whether you're trying to write a novel in a month or trying not to fail analytical lab techniques. I hope this has been helpful, and make sure you check out the rest of the playlist down below if you are looking for advice for Nano, or if you're planning on working on any major project, because we're all trying to get things done. And until next time, be good.